We are absolutely 100% spoiled with technology these days, and I'm sure every generation before us will have said that phrase. However, you have to have some context. For example, in the days before knives, forks, and spoons existed, it was probably pretty easy to invent a spoon. Well, there you go, there's a spoon. I've invented it. So these days, everything has been invented. So how do you improve on that? Well, I'll make a spoon and it'll be see-through. Already been done. I'll make a spoon that's resistant to heat and cold. Already done. Well, I'll give it USB. Actually, I have to check on that one. No, it's already been done. So it's really difficult to get products that have been invented to stand out these days. Well, I'll make a quadcopter. Already been done. In fact, there's millions of them. Well, I'll make it really small. Yep, there's millions of those too. Well, I'll make it brushless and micro and it'll fly really good. Yep, there's loads of those too. Well, I'll give it FPV. Yep, loads of those too. Well, I'll make it the best micro out there and I'm going to call it the TL130. And that is what this is. This is the best product that I have received all year. So on paper, this thing doesn't look spectacular at all, and I think if I was a consumer buying this, I would give it a miss. But this is the thing that has given me the biggest smile on my face all year, and I have been completely surprised by it. It is a 130 sized micro brushless quadcopter. Now, if you have seen my previous videos, you will know that I really couldn't find a place for brushless micros. I mean, it was always my opinion that if you were going to go micro, you should go for a brushed quadcopter so that it can be flown indoors and it can be relatively safe. It's not going to do any damage. And I reviewed the Mini Owl, which was a brushless quadcopter with protectors on it, which was quite good for indoors. So a quadcopter of this size, I struggled to find a place for it in my life, and so I never got one. What a stupid mistake that was, because I have flown this thing more than anything that I have flown all year, and let's find out why. So it's got 1106 motors, which are 3000 kV. And that is good for one reason, in that it doesn't rev too high, so it actually sounds like a normal 250 size quad rather than these 6000 kV motors that scream, make so much noise, but don't give a huge amount of power. These motors are just fantastic. And these ESCs here, they are tiny. They are 6 amp BL Halley ESCs. They support 2 to 3S. Now, I am using a 3-cell battery on this, which you might think, well, that's not going to give it loads of power. This thing has a ton of power. It's amazing, and you will see that in the flight footage in a bit. Now, another thing that is great about this quadcopter is the frame is absolutely rock solid. The carbon fiber is really thick. Another good thing, it's got a Naze 32 flight controller, which supports clean flight and, more importantly, Betaflight, which I have flashed to this already, so I didn't even try fly it with clean flight because I've never had decent results out of clean flight, and I always get great results out of Betaflight, so I flashed version 3 to this and set up my PIDs. I'll show you that a bit later. Got great results out of it. So the frame is really good, and it has got a 300 milliwatt FPV transmitter built into it. You can change the channels up here, which I'm never really a fan of dip switches, but they've made it easily accessible here with a screwdriver. I'll have to check how many channels that it supports. I'll overlay that here. But like everything, nothing is perfect. But the thing is, though, the things that aren't perfect about this are overwhelmed by how great this thing flies. I've never flown a quadcopter before that has given me such a big smile on my face. I couldn't believe it. People who know me would be surprised that I have been left speechless by a product, but I actually was with this. I was absolutely in awe of it, flying it. So you have a camera at the front. This is one of those Diatone / Banggood 3-gram cameras. It doesn't have a microphone on it. It's got a 170-degree wide-angle lens. We've got a JST connector at the front there. We've got these 2-leaf propellers, which provide so much thrust. Now, what aren't you given? Well, you aren't given a battery, first of all, and I'll come on to that in a bit. You aren't given a receiver. However, it does come with some cables. It comes with a little JST connector that turns into one of these servo connectors here, and this is an X4R SB that I have crammed in there. It fits just about. I have got double-sided sticky tape and a bit of grass. It did come with the grass, by the way, and that just fits in there. Now, there are some problems with this. Like I say, first of all, is where do you put the antennas for this, and I have just sort of squidged them in the frame. That didn't cause me any range issues. I was managing to get great range out of this, at least 120 meters, which is all I need for my flying field. And yes, these screws here, they were not screwed in very tight, and I lost a few of them. Luckily, I had some spares, but a little bit of quality control issue there. Again, I can forgive it. And the biggest problem with this frame is, you might notice that this side I've got a standoff here, and this side I haven't, and that is because there was one, and I've removed it. And you can see there that this standoff hole goes right in the way of this JST connector there. I think it's a 4-pin, and there's no USB connector on this flight controller, and that is because you are given a lead that plugs into it to save weight, and then that becomes an FTDI adapter, and then you plug that into your computer and you can install Betaflight. I will just show you that. I have got the box that it comes in here. So this is what you get. Very tidy, heat shrunk USB connection. That just plugs into there, and no problem, you've got your clean flight setup or Betaflight setup. Yeah, but I didn't like that standoff at all. It's in the box somewhere, but the frame is so thick. I have crashed this so many times, I actually was getting worried because I've flown this so much. I thought, I'm going to have to buy another because eventually I'm going to crash this because I'm flying it so much. But this frame is rock solid, and even with that standoff missing, there is no problem to the integrity of this frame. It is rock solid. I guess they just didn't want to ship it without this standoff because it kind of looks like it's incomplete, but it really isn't. It's much better with this standoff removed. Just use a hex key there and remove the standoff. And again, make sure that all these are tightened up. Another great thing about this quadcopter is underneath it has got a beeper or buzzer, low voltage buzzer. Now it does come with a sticker on it. You need to remove that, otherwise you're going to get the quietest beep you've ever heard. But these things are really loud. You can hear it from 100 meters away, and it is brilliant. We also have a hologram there to say that it is genuine tarot. Another thing that I didn't like about this setup is the battery strap. It's not really long enough, and you can see it doesn't really have like a thread to go through, so I have ditched that and I'm using one of these battery straps from Picnic Quads. They make just the best battery straps for micro quadcopters that there are, so I replaced that out. And another reason why this doesn't look good on paper, look at this. You have got a dipole antenna there for the video transmitter, which is usually never a good sign. However, it is a 300 milliwatt VTX, which is loads of power. So even with just this little antenna there, I have got range over all of my field now. I do get more video breakup than with a cloverleaf antenna, but the good thing about this is it's indestructible. If that was a cloverleaf antenna, one of those micro ones, it will get splattered in no time. So I can kind of see why they have done that, but I love this quad so much that I think I will change this out for a cloverleaf antenna, because really it's its only major weakness. But as you will see from the flight footage, I was flying this around no problem, just a little bit of breakup, not too bad. Another hidden treasure about this quadcopter is you can adjust the angle of the camera. It's on a little pivot there, and you can lift the camera angle up to however you desire. The thing is though, if you have the camera too flat, you do get this bit of carbon in shot, and if you have it too high, you get 2 bits of carbon in shot there as well. If you get it just right, you don't have any carbon in shot. That is there to protect the camera. I could probably cut that back a bit and then I wouldn't have any of this in shot at all, but really it does not bother me whatsoever. So we have some other stuff in the package here. We are given the option for a PWM receiver, so that's just going to plug into the side there and you have your individual channels. But of course I'm using the S-Bus receiver, so it's just the one connection, which is pretty neat. You are given a spare set of these blades, which have just thrown themselves everywhere. That one thing that I didn't like is that you are only given enough screws for one set of propellers, and these screws can be easily lost, so I would have liked to have seen some more screws. We're given like double-sided Velcro tape. I guess that's for putting in your receiver there. Yeah, it is such a nice package. Now, you aren't given a battery, so the batteries that I'm using are these, which are the Nanotech 450 milliamp 3-cell batteries, and you know what? You get a 5-minute flight time on this thing. Full throttle, full pelt, just completely ruining the battery, but do you know what? It takes it. And this beeper, I was literally like, I was flying around, I had my phone, I was like, why isn't the beeper going off? And it is just so efficient, and that is another reason why I think this is the best product I have received all year. Its flight time is the best for a brushless micro that I have seen so far, and after 5 minutes I'm ready to land. And because this thing is so small and so light, I think it's about 93 grams without the battery, then you aren't really worried about damaging property or anything like that. I mean, I actually test flew it inside, which is something you can't do with a 250 quadcopter. So yeah, I really like that about it. I can't praise this thing enough. And so what I'm going to do next is, if you are looking to buy this thing, and I would seriously recommend that you do, you will not be disappointed. I'm going to plug this thing into Betaflight, and I'm going to show you my settings that I use, because I got it really locked in. I'm going to do a line of sight flight, and then some FPV. So let's go and do that. Let's go into Betaflight. So here we are in Betaflight, and the first thing that I did is plug that little JST lead with the USB connector at the other end into the computer, and you can see here it comes up as COM 11. Then I went into the firmware flasher and selected NAS and the latest version, which is version 3. I then selected manual baud rate, I loaded the firmware online, and then flashed the firmware, and it flashed straight away, no problem. So I'm going to connect to it now. And I calibrated the accelerometer there, and then if we go into ports, I've got the serial RX set up on the UR2 for the receiver. If we go into configuration here, we've got quad X set up. I've got the ESC protocol set to PWM. I don't think this one supports one-shot 125, but that was not a problem in the way that it flew at all. I have got motor stop turned off here so that the motor spin when I select it to arm. I've set the minimum throttle to 1091, which gives it a nice idling speed. We've got the maximum throttle set to 2000. Then if we go down here, I have got the VBAT selected so that that beeper works. So we've got the minimum cell voltage there at 3.3. and the warning cell at 3.5. Now, to get the receiver working, you actually have to plug a battery in this. So I've got the battery connected at the moment. You can see that it's reading 10.7 volts. This is a depleted battery, if you are wondering. So the receiver, as I'm using the FR Sky S-Bus, I've got serial RX selected there. And then down here, I've got S-Bus selected, and that is bound to my Tyrannus. Of course, you can use a CPPM receiver. I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't see an option to use a satellite receiver. All I'm seeing here is 5-volt receivers, but that's not a problem for me. It fits the FR Sky X4R receiver, no problem. So I'm using that. So if we scroll down here, I have got the gyro update frequency and PID loop at 1 kilohertz. Don't have anything else selected here. Now, actually, something they have changed recently in Betaflight. If you select this here, enable expert mode, you get the failsafe and everything, but the failsafe was set fine anyway. So it's set to drop, which is no problem from standard. That means that when this figure is enabled, which it should do when I turn the Tyrannus off, it sets no pulses, which should go below this figure. The quadcopter will drop. I have tested that and it works. No problem at all. So PID tuning, I'm using the Betaflight option here. These are the PIDs that are working perfect for this quad. We've got 60 on both the roll and pitch, and then 70 on the yaw. We've got 45 on the eye and 65 here for the pitch. And the quadcopter's actually beeping because that's what happens if it doesn't receive a signal. So I'm just going to unplug that for a minute. And then there goes my Tyrannus. So yeah, it will start to beep. So if you've lost it in long grass, that's quite a nice feature, but not so great for making a video. So where was I? Yes, so on the I here we've got 45, 65 and 45. On the D I've got 60 on the roll and 52 on the pitch. RC rate I've got at 1.0, super rate 0.8, and I don't have any expo on there. I find that that works really well for version 3, and on angle and horizon we've got the strength at 50. I find that works nicely. Got the throttle mid at 0.5, there's no problem there. So onto the receiver, and I'm going to plug everything back in again because it started beeping. Hopefully it's going to bind to my Tyrannus. I might need to turn my Tyrannus off and on again so that I can get the signal, but it works in TAER mode for the Tyrannus. So there you go, I got my throttle, and also test out your rates here. I love that you can check that. So for the modes, I've got arming on a switch on auxiliary 2, so my 2-position switch. I've then got angle and horizon. I actually need to add a beeper on this so that you can flick a switch and then the beeper goes off if you have lost it. However, you saw earlier that if it is left for too long, the ESC stop beeping anyway, so it's not too much of a problem. And one thing that I found that I had to do with this was calibrate the ESCs. One of the motors wasn't calibrated correctly, so you have to unplug the quadcopter and then tick this here, set that to maximum, plug in the battery to the quadcopter, ensuring that the props are off, and then reduce the master, and that will calibrate all of your ESCs. But that is my settings for Betaflight, and it works really well. So let's go on to the line of sight flight next. So I have got my Tyrannus connected to it, and I've got arming on a switch. So I'm going to do that. And the first thing you'll notice is how quiet this thing is. It sounds much more like a 250 quad. So the first thing to do is a punch out test. Wow, so much power. So I'm in angle mode at the moment, and it is so smooth. Let's get it close to the camera. Really neat looking thing, this. It is so well balanced and locked in. There's just so much power. Love it. And not a sign of that beeper going off at full throttle. So let's do some nice line of sight flips. Really nice. Oh, this thing is a beauty. Oh, so locked in. Wonder how close I can get one of those flips to us. Wow. Really nice. How low down can we do one of those flips? Oh, so snappy. And so fast. Whoa. Not even a hesitation when it falls to the ground. This is going to be in one of my top quads of the year, guys. So much power. So much power and so much flight time. You could be confused to thinking it was a 250 on board. Oh, very nice. Let's do some FPV. So this is actually the maiden, but it doesn't really look like a maiden flight. There's a little bit of vibration there on the video, but that is mainly because this was taken in really heavy sunlight, and that vibration wasn't really experienced at any other point in the flight. And just look how snappy this thing is, and also pay attention to how much power there is. It is locked in so good, and this is the point where I have just such the biggest smile on my face because I just cannot believe how well this thing is performing. I'm just flying it like I fly my ZMR, and I don't have to worry about having enough power to pull out of the maneuvers. I think that is evidence of a good quadcopter, when you can put an entire flight online and not have a crash because there's just enough power out there available for you to pull out of every situation. So now I'm doing a little bit of a range test, and even though it's using that dipole antenna and I'm using a cloverleaf antenna on the Fat Sharks, there is ample picture, and I'm really impressed with that. Yeah, anyway, so if you didn't guess, I really love this product. I am going to be classing it as one of the best products that I have received all year. I've been having so much fun with it. It does need improvements, but, you know, it's not that expensive. I think it's about £112. I'll put a link in the description if you want to check it out yourself. I strongly recommend that you do. Anyways, I'm going to leave you with some flight footage. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.